Well, I think we'll get started here. Bucky's got a lot to say. We don't want to rob him of any time. And as we start here, I'm just going to share screen for a couple minutes before I formally introduce Bucky. Can you see my connecting at CanoeingLive?
Not quite.
Not much to see. What are we supposed to see?
There
Oh,
we go.
there you go.
There we go.
Be able to see people.
Yes.
All right. And
Sometimes I want to see more though. It's okay for right now.
Just wave at me. I'm going to be sitting right there. I'll do it.
Yeah,
I want to
great,
thank you all for joining us this evening. And once again, I'm recording this session for posting on our CanoeingLive website. I hope you don't mind that. My name is Jim Olver, and welcome to CanoeingLive. A special welcome for those of you who have joined us for previous episodes. CanoeingLive is a virtual event series produced by myself, Devin Ingram, our paddling buddy, and my technical son, Thomas Olver. And we're aiming to celebrate canoeing, hear from some experts, share amongst ourselves, and build a community of canoers. I'm proud to be speaking from Treaty 7 territory, traditional lands of Stoney Nakoda, Blackfoot, Métis, and Tsuut'ina nations. And today, it was very fitting, my wife Chip and I were paddling on lower waterfowl lake, and an eagle flew over us and dropped an eagle feather. So I thought that was pretty neat. Here at CanoeingLive, we really like to connect with people. And so we've just spent almost 15 minutes chatting with early arrivals. We're already using the chat. And if you haven't had a chance already, please drop in the chat where you're zooming in from. We're going to do polling in a minute just to find out a little bit more about the group here tonight. Questions and answers always. We're going to share some audience photos, and once the presentation is over tonight, feel free to stick around for a bit of an after party, and we can just chat amongst ourselves until we run out of chat. Now I'd like to introduce Devin Ingram and ask him to run through a few polling questions.
Hey, Jim, thank you. So we have a few poll questions tonight. I'm going to launch the poll right now. Everyone should be able to see that on their screen. And here we go.
Yes. So please answer the questions. And
Do you want to fill this out?
yes, please.
Do you want to fill that out, or do you want me to just close it?
Okay, they're getting into it now, Devin.
We got lots coming in. We'll let that go for another 20 seconds. Does that sound good to you, Jim?
Yeah, I think they've answered.
All right.
Would you like to review it for us,
Okay,
Devin?
here's our last chance here.
And just before you're doing that, Brandy is checking in from Victoria now.
How come we never get anybody from the Maritimes?
They're sleeping already.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so here's our results from our poll. Have you ever been canoe tripping? 2 people said never. 3 people have said yes less than 5 times. And 19 people said yes more than 5 times. So quite an experienced group. Have you ever used a float plane on your canoe trip? 3 said never, 13 said yes, and 8 said not yet, which is exciting.
Oh my, this is exciting numbers.
And have you ever canoed in northern Saskatchewan? 14 said no, and 10 said yes.
Northern
So
Saskatchewan,
lots
we
new
should
to
probably
canoeing
see it.
northern Saskatchewan.
We're here at
And have you ever canoed in the Canadian Shield? 9 said no, and 15 said yes.
Good, good.
Well, that's very interesting. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
And we could. All right, and you might have to close that out yourselves. So it's always neat to find out what the group is doing. And now I hope you've noticed that it has been a few weeks since our last show with Mark Lund, and I'm just delighted you're with us again tonight, Mark. As Devin and I developed Canoeing Live, one of our non-negotiables was that we couldn't let the show get in the way of our paddling. And we've been doing a lot of paddling lately and a lot of teaching as well. And so it has been a few extra weeks between shows this time. And tonight, it's a bit of a change. Devin and I are celebrating another one of our legends, and we'll use more of an interview style to introduce Jim Buckingham to you. As always, throughout the show, if you've got a question or a comment, please drop it in the chat. Devin's going to be monitoring that, and we'll get to it as best we can. But I'm delighted to introduce Jim Buckingham, or as he says, Bucky, because he and I have the same first name, and we often are misunderstood in the Valley. Longtime Banff resident, outdoorsman, teacher, skier. There's a couple people in the waiting room there. Devin, please. A geologist, which as I am, and a passionate canoeist. Born in Saskatchewan, has a history with the Winnipeg Canoe Club, and I think he might have met his wife there.
I did.
And Jim Buckingham changes people's lives. And tonight we'll focus on 2 ways that he does that. The first is by teaching them how to canoe, and in particular in rivers. And the second is to introduce them how to canoe trip, and as he has for our family. And many of us first meet Jim when you sign up for the Banff River canoeing course. And I'm just going to stop sharing here and ask Dev to please spotlight Jim Buckingham. And I'm going to welcome Jim to Canoeing Live. And I gave you the tip. He's in the Canoeing Live video studio. And Jim, tell us about how and why you started the Banff Canoe course.
Well, it started the first summer that Mary and I were here. We moved, Mary had moved from Manitoba, and I'd been wintering here and summering in Manitoba. So the first summer here, I was teaching some friends a little bit about river paddling. And one of the person we were teaching was the Alpine Club of Canada club manager. And she said, "This is good stuff you're teaching. I can arrange through ACC and Alberta Continuing Edge to get recognized, and it will be a certified Alberta company course. And the ACC will help you." So that started it. I thought that sounds like a good deal. They're doing all the work. So I think I had 10 or 12 people that year. And I think it was a single weekend. And I was teaching river paddling, and I'd learned from a book, which was Basic River Canoeing, which was written I think in Vermont, in the Appalachians. Lachans or Latins. Anyway, it's pretty damn similar to what we were teaching today. Ours is a little bit upgraded, but not that much. The next year, things got way better when Doug showed up. And Doug really knew what he was doing in whitewater and river paddling. So the caliber of the course went way up with Doug on board.
Excuse me, Bucky,
Yeah,
and you're referring to Doug McCowan.
yes.
Yes, and tell us a little bit about his background.
Well, you could get Doug to tell his background because he's on the screen.
But you're the one that's supposed to be talking, Jim.
No, I don't like talking that much. We do this all the time. Doug and I have paddled together for 40 some years so far.
So far.
Yes. So have I got to do this, Doug?
Well, I mean, all I can say is that I came on that probably the second course?
Yes, second time it was taught.
Um,
The next year. It was 1 year with me, and from ever after, it's been you.
yeah. Well, that was certainly the historical start. I mean, I came out here at that time, I was teaching the canoeing program at the Banff National Army Cadet Camp. And that is how I met you through Dawn. But before that, before I came here, I was canoe racing in Southern Ontario, and that's where my history actually comes from. And then the course just went with you and I for years and years.
Yes,
And then, of course, that other guy came in, Mr. Olver.
yes. Well, we had
Okay.
rescue boats. Jim started as a rescue boat, I know.
So tell us what are rescue, or tell us how is your course different than other courses, Bucky?
Well, one thing at the time I started teaching, most canoe teaching was done for schools. There wasn't much adult programs. So I decided I really wanted to teach at an adult level and not use the older techniques that had been used with kids for years. So that was one thing I did different. The other thing, as we evolved, we found we had people coming back year after year. So we corralled some of them and said, how would you guys like to be rescue boats? And they would. So since then, we've had volunteer rescue boats for every course. And that's really nice. We can talk more about rescue boats later, I think. But that's the two big things we do differently. The other thing is we believe teaching paddling, learning paddling, and doing paddling should all be fun at all times. If it ain't fun, don't do it. So we really try to keep all the course stuff really, really lighthearted. There's always a bunch of stupid joking going on. And pretty soon the students catch on and they're making fun of us, which is great because it keeps everything lighthearted. And I think that's so, so important in helping people to learn. Should I say anything else here? If I said enough.
What about, did you have mentors in canoeing?
Yes, I did. In Winnipeg, there was a guy, his name was Bill Brigden. And for years and years, he made a living sort of making canoes. He never charged as much as he should have. But he's not the only business in canoeing that did that. So Bill was a pretty famous athlete around Winnipeg. They used to have long distance swims. The most famous one was across Lake Winnipeg. And Bill used to win that in the 40s, I think. And then he got into canoe racing. And he was a very good canoe racer. And out of that came his first contract to make a bunch of canoes. So you still see them around. I saw one in Banff last week. Brigden canoes, they write on them. They're fiberglass, but they're sweet boats. And Bill used to come to the YMCA where I was hanging out a lot of my time and took us on a canoe trip together. Well, that did it. I was into canoe tripping and paddling. Kind of into paddling already, but Bill really helped that along. So he was my mentor for flat water. And for moving water, my mentor was down in the lower corner of my page, Doug McCowan. I was fiddling around with this book stuff, but Doug took it up about 6 notches in caliber of what we were doing and how we were teaching it. So there's my 2 mentors.
Well, that's great. I remember taking your course and then we do the 2 week, I think it was 2 weekends, and then
Yes.
I wouldn't canoe again for another year. I thought the only time you could canoe was on the course.
Yeah.
And so it kept going back and going back. And I always remember you did a lot of splitting people up. You just had a good sense of when it was time to break up a pair.
Yes, that's very common. I learned that from ski teaching. Never let a husband and wife be in the same class, or not only wives, but significant others. And sometimes it's the best thing you can do is get the two of them away from each other, and they learn way faster. And they're too far apart then to yell at each other. All you guys are really experienced paddlers, it sounds like. So you know why the seats are near the end of the boat. It's so you can't reach your partner with a paddle. You can laugh now. Okay, we done that?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Let me show you a few pictures here. I'm gonna
Okay,
screen share again. Here I go. Hold on. Here it comes. So here, can you see that?
yes, it's great. Who's that behind you, Doug?
Oh, man, that is Heidi, isn't it, Jim?
Oh, this is from
You're
last
right.
weekend.
That's
Yeah.
Heidi Widmer.
It looks like Heidi Widmer, if those of you who don't know, is an Olympic class athlete. She's strong as a bull, fit as a, just magnificent. But when you look at her here, she just looks like a regular girl. If you look at the other picture where we're standing on shore, she's about a foot taller than I am. I never really realized that until we got to the end. But she was great fun. Yeah, she was having a load time. This is at Lake Louise on our course last weekend. Last weekend? Shortly ago.
Yep. And I find, because I took the course many times, became a rescue boater, and then on, they asked me to help instruct. And one of the scariest points of an instructor's world is getting in the front seat with one of the students and going down the Lake Louise Rapids. And I think Doug looks a little bit, well, he looks pretty confident in that picture.
I was just going for the eddy.
And steering from the front.
And, well, that's what my end is supposed to do.
Yeah. So the picture on the right here is, you know, we tend to just get out on the river, find the good eddies, in and out of the eddies. I'm going to show you another couple here on the left. A bit of teaching moment. There's Bucky teaching right in front of Castle Junction. And there's one of our sort of a graduating class there below the Red Earth Creek Rapid.
These are actually shot in the studio, and the backgrounds are faked.
Yeah. And but every course we get dumps, and we want students to, well, talk about our attitude about having dumps and things, Bucky.
Okay. Well, we think that if people are going to paddle rivers, they better get used to the idea they're going to fall in sometimes. And so we would like people who take our course, who've never dumped in the river, to dump while they're with us, because we can handle it. Our rescue boats are really good at it, and everybody can learn by watching a rescue. And I think the second and third, you get a lot better at falling in. And you can, after a few dumps, you can say, oh, well, here we go again. Where the first dump is sometimes pretty stressful.
Yeah, you don't want that first dump to be when you're on your own or with people who can't paddle out somewhere where you have no support.
That's right, for sure.
And so here's a nice throw bag practice at Baker Creek Eddy.
Yes. That kid could throw, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like one person out of however many we had.
If you had your choice on that course, look for him.
Yeah.
He was deadly. He had an excellent throw bag, though. It was mine.
It was mine.
My design.
And there's Kim Hahn down below, throwing a nice bag out.
Yeah, I've got that half blocked out. Is my technician here? No, he's gone somewhere.
No, he's
It
up
doesn't
with me.
matter. I've seen the pictures.
All right. Well, we wanted to give you a sense of the Jim Buckingham and the way most people meet him. He's probably trained up about 1,500 people in the Bow Valley.
I had excellent helpers and lots of them.
Well, he's a great teacher. He just loves to let you learn yourself and just stand back and give you some mentoring from the side.
So what do you think happened there? Is one of my lines.
Oh, what? Oh, yes.
Especially when they're coming out of a failed attempt.
So now we want you to.
What happened? You were suddenly cut off, Jim.
Okay, Buck. Okay. I'd like you to talk a little bit now about the Canadian Shield.
Okay, let's move on to Canadian Shield. Are we doing canoe trip safety later?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, that's fine. I just got to change paper here. Thomas has got me set up here just excellent. This is beautiful. Okay, the Canadian Shield. I was really surprised when we found out how many of you guys have paddled in the Canadian Shield. I was expecting to introduce a whole bunch of people to the Canadian Shield because most Alberta paddlers or BC paddlers have never even heard of it. But the Canadian Shield is where canoes were invented, our style of canoes, that is. There's other kinds of canoes, dugouts usually, or skin canoes that, I gotta say this right, Inuit people make. But birch bark were made for the Canadian Shield. It was the Canadian Shield was the reason that canoes like most of us use, tandem canoes or Canadian canoes they're often called, were made for the Canadian Shield. The Ojibwe tribe made the best ones, and white guys took their design and put some different materials in it. Originally basswood and then different woods, and finally aluminum, fiberglass, and now Kevlar and carbon fiber, and probably a few other things too. But the shapes remain strangely the same because the Ojibwe had worked out the shape, I think, pretty darn well for a multi-purpose canoe. And most of our canoes that we use on this course, or certainly that we use tripping, are pretty close to some of the best Ojibwe canoes. Ojibwe are also called Soto, Anishinaabe, and probably several other things. But when I was a kid, they were Ojibwe. Anyway, more credit to them. Now, the Canadian Shield. Let's talk about the Canadian Shield. So we showed the map, there it is. So there are different physiographic regions in Canada. On the west is the Cordillera, which means mountains. In the center there in lower Alberta, quite a bit of lower Saskatchewan, and just a little corner of Manitoba are prairies or plains, either way. The Canadian Shield wraps around Hudson Bay, and in the bottom of Hudson Bay is the Hudson Bay lowlands, and so on across Canada. But the biggest physiographic division in Canada is the Canadian Shield in pink there. And the shield has these peculiar characteristics that resulted in the canoe design. The Canadian Shield is ancient rock, 2 billion to 4 billion years, I read the other day. So it's really old rock, and it's sort of the basement of at least some of the continents, but certainly is here. And this, all that pink is where the basement shows through. So that's the shield country, is this old rock. It's very hard rock, and it's been scraped by glaciers. You notice along the left-hand side, the Alberta, Saskatchewan side of the shield there's a gray band. That represents somewhat like the sand country, which is below the shield everywhere. So when the glaciers scrape the material off the other parts of the Canadian Shield, just on that gray zone, that's where most of that sandy stuff ended up. So that's how it got there. The glaciers put it there. And you know what happened to the glaciers, I trust. You don't? Well, the glaciers went back to get more dirt to move into the other part of Canada. Oh, well, guess I'll give up being a comedian. So anyway, that's how the Canadian Shield originated. So what the Canadian Shield is now is, as all you people who paddle there, it's a lot of bare rock, some scruffy trees, some muskeg, and millions, literally millions of lakes. Most of them small, most of them really suitable for canoes, and most of them pretty close together. Some of them are connected by creeks. There are a few big rivers like the Churchill and a few other rivers. I can't think of more right now. Oh, the Madawaska is pretty big, isn't it? Anyway, so the Shield is canoe country. There's a birch bark. Let's look at that birch bark again. Can we, Devin? Okay, so there's what I mean by a typical shape of a birch bark canoe, probably Ojibwe. They are apparently the best at it. So that's sort of a modified thing. I think is that birch bark on the outside of a cedar strip? Does anybody know? There's lots of, who said that?
That looks like a standard bark and rib construction.
Yes. Okay, so you think that's standard construction?
I think so.
Yeah, okay, okay. They
So
didn't have,
Bucky,
yes.
Bucky, what are the key features of that canoe that made it so valuable to the indigenous people?
Well, one thing, it carries a big load. So even if you were native 1,000 years ago, you could pile the whole family into the canoe and go places with a lot of freight too. So it's easy to put kids in the middle, mom and pop on the ends, and you can carry a big load from place to place. Also, it was all made from local materials. You didn't have to carry, as long as you're in the Shield, most places you didn't have to carry any repair stuff because it was all there. Birch bark and pine sap or balsam sap, willow roots, and you're in business, and wood. So it's eminently repairable. Our boats now, we're of course patching with Kevlar and carbon fiber, but whatever. The other thing is the canoe moves along fairly well with paddling, and it's important that it be paddled. Rowing is definitely faster, but you can't see where you're going. And if you're hunting all the time, you want to see where you're going. The other advantage of canoes is they go really well in weed beds, like wild rice. Canoes are excellent for 1,000 years or so and for harvesting wild rice. One paddler and one guy with the ricing sticks to beat the rice over the gunnel and into the boat. They're also easy to carry. That birch bark probably started out at less than 70 pounds. So they're pretty easy. If you're doing it a lot, they're pretty easy to carry over portages. I know of people doing a 25-mile portage with a canoe. They were changing watersheds. And of course, all good Canadians know the history of the voyageurs and what they did with birch bark canoes. So it turned out they were designed for the Canadian Shield, but they work pretty well in almost any terrain that's got water. Not so good on oceans. But inland waterways, this is the baby that does the job. Any more points to add on the Canadian Shield there? So the Canadian Shield surface is bare rock, that's the easy part, and it's all up and down. There's not much relief, 200 feet vertical at the most. Most of it is less than that the hills are, say, above the lakes. And there's deep grooves between the ridges in many cases. Most of them are filled with lakes. The other ones are filled with, the answer is?
Swamps.
Yes, swamps, muskeg. Hell of a hard country to travel in other than by canoe. Walking on land is a major chore in that country. It's just not worth the time. When you can jump in a canoe, pile in a bunch of stuff, as Mary and I have in the frame that's on there, and you can go out and stay out for weeks because you can carry so much food. Our maximum trip was six weeks without any resupply. We started out with all our food except fish for 6 weeks. And that's kind of amazing as compared to being in the jungle in Africa, where the only way you can do that is have about 1,500 bearers to carry all your loads. Or in Canada and the United States, pack horses. Boy, you need a lot of pack horses to stay out for 6 weeks. It really can't be done. And backpacking, you're really, really tough if you can carry enough food to last 3 weeks. That's really, really the extreme you can do on personal backpacking like we do in this continent. Okay. So I'm pretty hot on the Canadian Shield and how, yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Bucky, tell us a little bit about the attitude you have towards safety when you're out on your own, or maybe with
Okay.
a couple other people.
Sure, I got some stuff on that. Okay, some things about the Canadian Shield. Many people say, oh, isn't that dangerous? You don't take little kids out there. I think one of the safest places you can be in this country is in the Canadian Shield in small lakes. The kid's got a life jacket on, you got a life jacket, PFD on. What could be safer? If the kid can swim, it's great. Otherwise, you just turn the canoe, kid falls out of the canoe, no problem. We had a kid fall out once. Mary heard her go, grabbed her with one hand and towed her with her head underwater till I got the boat stopped. So the water's warm, the kid's not going to freeze to death. It's a pretty darn safe place to be. For example, on canoe trips, there are no semi-trailers to crush your car and all your kids. There are no robbers, muggers, or lawyers, or red tape. There's no government forms. I think that's changing. Unless you're not careful about who you go with and do not hang around where motorboats can go, interactions with assholes are pretty infrequent. So the Canadian Shield is a very, very safe place to go, I think. But some things about the Shield that you have to know how to navigate. You can use the excellent NTS maps, and there's some other people who have done some good maps. Know how to, the big thing on a canoe trip is as the senior member of the canoe trip, or if you have a committee, which works sometimes, is making decisions as to what you will do and what you won't do. That's not just rapids on rivers, but big lakes and what's the weather look like? Because lakes can be very dangerous if the wind gets up. If they're like a mirror, what the heck? No problem. But you got to keep track all the time of what's the wind doing? And maybe we better head to shore. But that's judgment. It's your judgment. It's not somebody that's driving another vehicle at you at a closing rate of 170 miles an hour. Okay. But some other things about safety in the Canadian Shield. A, carry a communication device. They're so good now, there's no reason not to. We used to go without them because they were not very good. When we did our 6-week trip, we had a radio that didn't work. And it had very heavy batteries, and we packed it all over northern Manitoba and never got a message out. But nowadays they're good. So for the weight of and price of a communication device, there's lots of things available. Personally, I like sat phones, but people can make arguments for other ones. So a communication device. Another safety practice that I'm concerned with, always travel with someone or two in another canoe that are at least as good at canoe rescue as you are. Because having buddies that can help you when you do dump, and you will dump, the best thing you can have at hand is somebody who can get you out of the water. People do canoe alone, but that sure raises the danger. So have a good buddy. Make sure he gets trained. Always travel with one or two in another canoe, or 2 or 3. When you start getting up to 5 or more, it becomes unmanageable, really, I think. where were we here? Another thing that people
Well,
don't think,
Jim,
yes. Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
that's all great information. Just to give you a little break here,
Yeah.
here's an image for people that want to get a start into the Canadian Shield, especially in Western Canada, where you took Chip and you took us to Mississippi.
Yes.
And here we are at Osprey Wings, just about to load onto a plane.
Where were you
Tell us
going?
about, well, I think we were going to the Paul River there.
Ah,
And tell us about those canoes there that seem to slip inside of each other.
They do slip inside of each other. I think that's my clipper on the top, or on the bottom is my yellow clipper. And I'm trying to read the print on the side of that green boat.
Mad River Canoe.
Oh, okay. So that's a 16-foot Mad River, fits inside my canoe. And Clipper offers an option where all the things that go across the canoe, like seats and thwarts and end plates, all can be unscrewed and taken out. So then you can put one canoe inside another, which is no problem if it goes inside a twin otter or hangs on the floats of a single otter. You get two canoes for the price of one that way, because the weight of the canoe is nothing for those planes, but the volume is critical. So that's a little trick we've learned to do. Put one canoe inside the other. Okay, is that enough of that, Jim?
Yeah, I think so. And we've got some images of the Canadian Shield.
Oh, good.
And look at all the, well, to a couple geologists, this is pretty exciting. Mississippi, one of the jump off places, is in the center lower part here. You might be able to make out at least the general lettering.
Thing about the Shield,
I'm
look
going to
at
go
those
to the
lakes.
next.
All those lakes are dark spots there. That shows it better. All the dark black stuff is water. It's a paradise for canoers. The nice thing is a lot of the lakes don't connect by water, which keeps power boats out, because I don't like power boats. Don't know many paddlers that look forward to power boats. Real paddlers, that is. Not that I'm prejudiced or anything. But there's good sample of Canadian Shield. And there's the bottom of all those lakes in a line diagonal across the photo. South of that, that's sandhill country. Notice the difference. There's fewer lakes. There's quite a few lakes, but I can tell by the color of the rock there, it isn't rock, it's sand. It's sandy colored. In the north part, you see all the ridges of that basement rock there, which makes the Shield such excellent paddling and such excellent camping. And these little lakes tend to warm up. They're good for fishing. They're good for swimming. There's
Good for
nothing better
drinking.
at the end. Pardon?
They're good for drinking.
Yes, they're crystal clear.
Yeah, Jim,
And
tell us about
unclean.
the Churchill River now.
Okay, here's the Churchill River. So La Loche here at this end is something like the headwaters of the Churchill. There's a lot of rivers come in from different points against the Alberta border. This is the Alberta border here. Oh, I forgot, I can't point. Is one of you guys got a pointer?
I
you looking
do. I'm going to get it out.
Okay,
What do you want? What do you want me to point at?
well, La Loche is almost in Alberta. I
I'm
see
sorry.
the red.
Didn't quite hear that, Bucky.
Oh, La Loche is almost in Alberta. You see where La Loche is there on the left side?
Yeah, yeah.
That's about
So
the
here-
head. Okay, you go.
So there's the Alberta border's just offside this map, and so the
Yes.
Churchill starts about here.
Yes. It actually has quite a few headwaters in that region, but so the Churchill starts there, goes right across Saskatchewan. I've got something blocking my left-hand side here. Can you correct that? I want to get that somewhere else. I'm calling in my tech here. I don't know if you've all got the same. There, that's what we wanted. Great, thank you. Okay, on the other side, the Churchill River going across here goes into Manitoba and into, I've done this canoe trip from this lake, Grenville Lake, north there and across towards Hudson Bay. So this is beautiful canoe country. There's very few people in it and very few roads. There's only 2 roads go north in Saskatchewan, other than maybe some private roads. Is one goes up beside the Haltane River and the other goes up towards Reindeer Lake and on north. Now, all the spaces between all those little named rivers are full of lakes. They're like that country you saw on the air photo. Lakes and lakes and lakes. You could get lost in there for years. And you can hang out forever and you'll rarely see people, as long as you don't go where they have motorboats. It's great, wonderful place to be. Warm summers, no bugs pretty much after the 1st of August. Warm water, good fishing, and beautiful, beautiful country. Is that an introduction to the slides you want to show?
Well, I wanted to show Bucky's top
Okay.
3. I say 3, but he gave me 5 trips. Whoops.
Well, that I've done, and I've only done, 40 years of canoe tripping, so I'm just a rookie. But this is some of the canoe trips that I have been on and would go again. McLennan Lakes is a great place to take beginners. It's a long, narrow lake. It's easy to get to shore no matter how hard the wind blows. It's pretty, it's not heavily used, and you can connect into lakes in all directions from McLennan. Number 2 is next lake north of Brabant. This is on the way from Mississippi to Reindeer Lake. Brabant's a great trip in what I call high shield country. Lots of rock, lots of water, and not much else. The Foster River is between the Paul River and the Haltane. If that helps, it's in the center of the map there. It comes into the Churchill from the north. Most of these places recommended here are in northern Saskatchewan. There's one river here, the Barrens, which says MB after it. That's for Manitoba. Manitoba also has some excellent paddling. Somewhat more advanced because there's quite a bit of drop on the east side of Lake Winnipeg coming down from Ontario towards the lake. So there's really good river paddling there for people who like paddling rapids. It's a great place. There's 4 or 5 rivers. The Barrens, in my opinion, is the best of them. The Haltane's another river off of Churchill. How's that, Jim? Enough? More?
Very nice. Very nice. Now tell us about the types of animals that you'll see.
Oh, I have a list here somewhere. Oh, well, I'll
Jim-
see what I can do. Well,
Jim, we actually had a question in the chat before we get too
Okay.
far. Maybe back to
Sure.
your previous slide.
yes.
We have a question. How long does it take to paddle across Saskatchewan on the Churchill?
Depends what boat you have, how ambitious you are. I would say for many people, don't try it in less than 3 weeks. It's better to do it in sections anyway, I think, but you could get all the way across in 3 weeks if you really go hard, but 6 weeks would be better. Does that help whoever's question that was? We like paddling in those small rivers you see on the picture there that come in from the north. Those are small rivers, but eminently paddleable. The portages are short. There's some easier rapids and some harder rapids that we don't run. All the way across Saskatchewan there. And it continues into Manitoba as well. But Mississippi's the center here, which is great because that's where you fly out of to get to all these rivers. Okay?
Okay, thank you. Now to the animals.
Yes, animals. Otters are my favorite. Otters are fun to watch. There's a bear. I'll talk more about bears later. Anyway, there's some black bear pictures. If you're lucky, you'll see deer. There's not many deer in the Shield. There's not much food for them. You're much more likely to see a moose. And most trips in the Shield, I would say we see at least one moose. Beavers, lots of beaver dams. Beavers like to be out in the dark, I think. evenings or mornings if you really want to see beaver. But you know, evenings and mornings, they're out there working on the dam, working on the house. They're just like cottage owners. They're always working on it. Other animals. There's rabbits. There's lynx. I don't think I've ever seen cougars in the Shield. Anybody want to add some more animals that I missed there?
I think we saw a mink
Yes,
once.
that's very likely. They're just like really tiny otters.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Do you
they-
remember that, Devin?
seeing
I
them.
don't remember that. I'm not sure that I was on that trip. We saw an otter once. I remember that. I don't
Yeah,
remember
they're
the
great
mink.
fun.
Yeah.
Wolves, pelicans. Christopher's
Yeah.
saying pelicans. Mary's
Yes,
adding
right on.
wolves.
Yes, we have
Thank
seen
you.
wolves.
Thanks, everyone.
And lots of birds. There's lots of eagles. There's lots of ospreys,
Yes,
geese, pelicans.
all true.
And-
Seagulls.
And lots of
Martin.
fish.
Yes, and lots of fish. Northern pike mostly and pickerel, which Americans call
Wall.
walleye. Yes.
It's because they don't know any better.
Oh, yeah, okay.
All right.
So there's
so-
lots of animals to see. You just have to keep your eyes open. They're there.
Just to give you a little bit of a break here, Bucky, I'm going to
Yeah.
add a few. Here's a few photos again. This is osprey wings in Mississippi. They've got a whole selection of float planes. There, the top left is Devin just grabbing the rope from that turbo otter. We were so happy when that plane flew right into our camp and came right up to the rock where we were camped on. We cut just enough trees down that they could get that wing over right to us. And again, there in the bottom right, you can see that nesting canoe again. And just for those of you who haven't had experience with fly-ins, we've been doing it for about 5 years, and we always nest canoes, which can save you so much money. But we're paying for 6 people anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 for a one-way trip if we're flying out and then paddling back. So that's say $1,500 for 6 people. That's pretty inexpensive. And if you have a fly out, fly back, I remember we had a bill of $5,000 among 6 people again, and still we thought that was quite a good deal. You pay $2,000-3,000 for a week in a cottage these days.
Never mind Club Med. Not that I've
Exactly.
never been there. I've just heard about it. I've never been there.
Oh yeah.
That's it.
So
Twin otter
osprey
on the
wings, is it? Yeah.
Sorry, Jim.
Osprey wings in Mississippi, and Churchill River Canoe Outfitters is there as well. And from them, you can rent canoes, you can rent gear, you can buy your food, get your maps. They can put you up the night before you leave. They can sell you a guide. So there's lots of different plans you can go on. Do you have anything to add to that, Devin?
No, I think that pretty much covers everything to do with float planes.
Okay.
I would like to promote Rick's other service that'll pick you up or drop you off on canoe trips.
Yes, and here it is. There's a picture of it.
Perfect.
It doesn't have to be an airplane. It can be using back roads, and the outfitter can do the driving for you and save the undercarriage on your car. This was Sid Fraser. I think Sid has joined us here tonight. We went to Brabant Lake on this trip, and there is a list of the types of things. And there are other outfitters, and I'm the gentleman who's on from Saskatchewan. If you know of other outfitters or resources that our audience can contact, please drop it in the chat for us. Let's see. Navigation and communication. Devin, can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. I think,
That's Guy Paulson.
is there some another slide with some information here, Jim? Next to
Yeah,
this
let
one?
me give it to you.
Yeah, so I thought I would talk a little, and feel free to jump in here too, Bucky, about sort of how we've been getting around the last few years and the types of maps that we've been using. So we've used traditionally government topo maps that have sort of been cut and pasted together in Photoshop to make it a little bit more intuitive and to cut down on map size and to make the details a little bit bigger. But we also we've used recently the new maps made by Rick, and that's the outfitter in Mississippi. We don't typically use a great deal of GPS on the trip, other than sometimes to confirm that we're sort of in the right spot or where we think we are. But there is a great app that we use called Topo Canada that allows you to download topo maps offline and without cell signal be able to see roughly where you are. And it's fairly accurate, and we find that it's been very helpful.
The proper name for those maps is not National Topographic Series maps.
Yeah, and you can get those online, or
NTS.
you can get them at some other map stores as well. I know in Calgary there's a map store that carries them. Do you have I think you stopped sharing your screen, Jim. There we go.
Coming back.
All the NTS 1 to 50,000 maps, which are what we use for paddling, are all free downloads from the government. If you can ever figure out the websites, you can download any map you want for free.
That is true. The websites are a little tricky to navigate. And then we talked also about sort of finding out information. So I feel like the best thing to do is to find out if you know anyone, or you can know someone who knows someone who's paddled in the area. But I've also had good success posting in Facebook groups, and sometimes, again, a friend of a friend can connect you with someone who's been there. And there's also 2 good guidebooks that are out now. There's Paddling Northern Saskatchewan, which is, I believe, the book the Laurel Archer book that is about the rivers. And then there's another one called Northern Saskatchewan Canoe Trips that it's sort of like a more general, this is a new book from Rick that has come out that's a more general sort of inspiration for the area. And there's just a few sentences on many, many different trips. Jim or Doug or Bucky, you guys have anything sort of to add to that?
I'll just clarify a little bit. Canoe River Outfits, Churchill River Canoe Outfitters, that's the CRCO, is Rick Dreidiger. He's really keen. He loves to give out information, and he knows it. If he doesn't know it, it doesn't exist in Northern Saskatchewan. So call him up, Churchill River Canoe Outfitters.
Was someone going to say something?
I
You
was,
can.
but I'm not.
Go ahead, Devin.
Yeah, the other thing that we really like to do as we're going, and this helps for future trips, is to take very detailed notes. Chip is very good at this. As we go, she keeps a pen in her map case and makes extensive notes about each portage, and then more specifically on the campsites that we land at, the quality of the campsite, the potential number of tent pads that are there should we come with a slightly bigger group than we have. And then we also like to write down sort of notable places where notable events happen, like Big Storm Island and Mother Bog Portage, things that sort of in our mind will, a couple of years later help jog our memory when we're sort of thinking about a trip or trying to remember bits and pieces of a trip. Maybe those things stand out a little bit more, and then you can piece your days together a little bit better.
I was just going to say that as Mary Buckingham mentioned in the chat a little while ago that may not have noticed, Saskatchewan does have these canoeing booklets that they've written as canoe guides for 50-some individual river trips in Saskatchewan. And they've got all the information you need, how long it is, descriptions of every portage, all the routes, and they're great. And they're certainly a great starting point for pretty much any river or route you're going to do in Saskatchewan. and
they're online.
they're online. So if you go to them, you can find out the river you want or the route you want and download them.
Yes, that's a great resource.
You know what is it the government of Saskatchewan that put those out?
Yes, you
Yes.
can get to them through government of Saskatchewan canoe tripping.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Something
I'll
like
try to
that.
find a link and I can pop it in the chat here.
Okay.
Yeah, they're originally put out. They're quite old, but they're from the tourism, government Saskatchewan tourism era.
Yes.
They've been around for a long time, but they're very, very handy. I mean, they have, you know, little inaccuracies like everything does, but they're a great resource.
Thanks
like me
for
to
that,
speak?
Doug. And what about communications, Devin?
Yeah, so Bucky talked about this a little bit earlier too. We always like to bring some kind of communication device with us. We always have a satellite phone that is stored in a clearly marked barrel. Mostly, this is what we use to communicate with the float plane pilot, potentially if we're in a interesting landing spot or trying to figure out where we're going to pick up. But then we also have an in-reach device for emergencies as well. Satellite phone could be used for emergencies too, but the inReach is a sort of backup and also as a way to connect in a less urgent situation. We also use it to get weather forecasts, which has been really helpful the last few trips we've been on when we've had sort of a string of bad weathers. You could kind of decide whether or not you're going to make a break for it, or you could just hunker down and hang out by a campfire for an extra day.
Bucky can tell you an excellent story about having a satellite phone for rescue purposes.
Yeah, I love telling this story about myself where I broke my femur. I was on the most dangerous place on a canoe trip, walking on the rocks on shore where they're wet. And I slipped and fell. Fortunately, I had Doug, paramedic, and did we have 2 or 3 nurses?
2.
Yeah, at least 2 nurses.
Don't seem to have any audio, Richard.
Oh, that sounds like Glenda. Is Glenda on there somewhere?
Yes, Glenda just arrived, but keep
Okay.
your story going there, Bucky.
Oh, I wanted to leave it. Anyway,
Okay.
so there I was, laying in a very shallow rapids with a broken femur. Ouch, that hurts. Boy, does that hurt. Anyway, Doug came and got me. We got to an island in the middle of the river was really spread out there, and there was an island in the middle of this really, really wide falls. Very falls, 4 feet high, 3 feet high, maybe less. Anyway, we got to the island. They laid me out on a rock beach, which was warm in the sun, and I was quite comfy there as long as I didn't have to move. And I thought I'll just live here for the rest of my life. But anyway, Doug busy, he goes and gets some pine poles. I think you cut them out of the portage you had to cut. They had to bash a little bit of a portage in to get above the island. Explaining that later. Anyway, Doug got some pine poles, slid all the life jackets onto them, makes an excellent, excellent stretcher. I know I've been on them with a broken femur, and they work like a dam. Learn how to do that, it's worthwhile. And so then they picked me up, all the people we had, Doug and 4 girls, 3 girls, many wives and stuff like that. Choke, that was Doug. And carried me up for portage because Doug had a sat phone. And I remember Donna was trying to get hold of somebody you're supposed to reach, and it wasn't working. Doug said, "Oh, hell, just phone the pilot." Wow, that was good advice. He said, "Okay, I know where you are. You told me, I know where you come and get you. We'll be on this lake in 2 hours." 2 hours he was there, which was great. They got me into that was really fun. The plane didn't like to go to shore there because there's lots of rocks close to shore. So the transfer was done on the water from the canoe over the float and into the back of the single otter. But that was tough. Not so tough on me, but the people who were putting me in. Anyway, so another 2 hours of flying time. and we're in Pine Falls, and I'm in the hospital in Pine Falls with a broken hip. Next morning, there was a doctor there. He was from India or someplace. He was really sharp. He said, "I just never mind. I've got some friends in Winnipeg." And pretty quick, he had a doctor arranged to work on me the next day. So the next day, 6 o'clock in the morning, we're on our way to Winnipeg. I think it was 25 or 26 hours after the accident, my hip was, what's it, transplant in my hip. So I have now a tin hip. Works really good. But I got it in under 30 hours from the time it broke. So
Well, thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Bucky. That's a good story. It gets better every time.
Yeah, well, we try to improve.
All right. Well, we wanted to say a little bit about packing and portaging as well. And here's Chip with our canoe. This is what we trip in. And we've got a selection of bags and barrels. We've got two of these 60-liter barrels that each have harnesses for carrying. And you notice they're side by side there, but you can't see the barrel on the left because it's covered with a towel. And that's the barrel that has the food in it. And we like to keep that barrel cooler. And so with evaporative cooling, we are always wetting that towel down, and it makes a big difference for the longevity of some of the produce that are that's in that barrel. We also have 3 of these plastic portage bags, Devin calls them. I think one of them is 120 liters, one of them's about 90, and I've got the numbers a little bit wrong, but we have 3 of those. And we also carry a water cube. You can see it close there in the stern seat. And this is an innovation that Devin taught us. We will filter enough water in the morning for the whole group, and we can be filling up our Nalgene's during the day. We don't carry it on portages. We try to drink the water before we have to portage it, but that has become very helpful for us. You can also see a rolled table there that Sid Fraser contributed to the trip as well. So this is how we travel. We have it all as waterproof as we can, especially those bags. The plastic bags are not as good at waterproofing things as the barrels. And so we try to double wrap. Everything that goes in a plastic bag is already in a waterproof bag. Now, Devin, can you add anything to that?
We're doing good, Thomas.
Yeah, that sounds pretty comprehensive, I think, Jim.
Okay, well, here's some packaging and portaging. And, you know, when you portage, the one thing Chip and I are really always trying to do is stay calm when we hit the land. There seems to be something that speeds everyone up, and we try not to race through the portage. We try to collect all our gear in one spot that is not in a prime traffic route so that people aren't tripping over it. We like to keep it all in one spot so that we don't forget anything. Then let's see.
And of course, that's part of the, I mean, much of the fun of portages is finding stuff that other people did forget and leave on the portage.
Yes, and trying not to ever let it be yours.
Exactly. I was just thinking, Jim, if you might talk about, or Bucky or somebody,
Yes.
For people who haven't been on the Shield before, the nature of the rivers is completely different. That it's pool and drop rapids and not continuous rivers like you have out here and in many other places. Jim, Bucky.
Yeah. Oh, I was drifting off. Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, I'll speak about that. It's almost like you're traveling on lakes.
Exactly.
And they are lakes, and they're reasonably calm. You can get wind issues on some of the larger lakes. And then every so often you've got to do a portage. And the portages, we try to pick trips that the portages vary from maybe 50 meters to maybe a kilometer. Sometimes you get longer than that. The portage you can see on the left here is a skidway. And this was built by indigenous people and perhaps outfitters to help get aluminum boats up and down these rapids. And I remember Chip was waiting for one of her hip transplants, and she rode the whole skidway in the boat itself. And but sometimes you get these skidways. This one looks like it's seen better days.
Most of them have.
Yeah. And when we are portaging, we're trying to help each other get the loads on our backs. This is me on the left. I'm carrying a barrel. And then I've got one of these plastic bags that conform to the top of the barrel. So I've got two loads there. I usually do my walking with a paddle, so it acts like a cane. And look at that portage in the top right hand. It has overgrown up at eye level. Down below, it was very good. And here in the bottom right is Sid Fraser, who loves portages. The only person that loves them more is Devin Ingram. And Devin, which bog is this?
This is the 3-log bog, if I had to guess.
What river are we talking?
This was on the Churchill River. This was sort of the last stretch before Otter Rapid above Mississippi.
Oh, gotcha.
There's two sort of long, I think they're both a kilometer long, portages that are basically a little river into themselves there. They're a series of
great,
pool
Devil.
and drop mud puddles.
Doug, did you want to explain pool and drop, or do you want me to?
Oh, well, you go ahead, Buck.
Okay, pool and drop. For people who've only paddled in the Shield, this is no news. These tend to be lakes and then a drop. And then it's calm again. It's probably a river, or maybe just be lake to lake, something with portage. But there's not like there is in the West here, where these continuous rivers, where there's never a break, the current just roars along for days and days and days. At practically every rapids, there's a big pool at the bottom. So if you wreck, you land up in the pool. The water's warm and you're going nowhere. You just float around in circles in the eddy. So pull and drop is a lot easier to deal with and more scenic actually than the roaring rivers of the Canadian Rockies. That may be just a personal comment, but there it is.
Thank you, Bucky. And here's a couple more pictures. When Devin and I portage, we help each other get the boats onto our shoulders. And also the bottom left picture, we try to use natural rocks to put our equipment on so that we don't have to lift it as high each time. And let's see, now lining. And Doug McCowan taught me about lining, and this is where you don't portage around. The people portage themselves, but you let the boats, you line them through the rapids. And it's a very dangerous thing. You've got to be under good control. And at a moment, things can go bad very quickly. But it's lots of fun.
And this is classic pool and drop. In the white water in the foreground, then there's a big pool. It's just water just sitting there, no current. Or if there's any current, it just goes around in circles. So if you wreck here, everything floats up in the eddy. It's great. Go out and pick up your luggage. The other thing I'd like to say about lining and portaging, work out to the best you can before you go on the trip, what you're going to wear on your feet on portages or on lining. You need really good grip, especially on lining. If you're going down rocks that are sometimes wet, you better have something good on your feet. barefoot portaging is just plain stupid. You got to have boots that you believe in. Boots or running shoes. I use running shoes and wet socks, but the running shoes have good grip on the rock.
You know,
Doug
we've
uses rubber boots.
Steel-toed, steel-soled rubber boots.
Yes.
just had a very interesting question in the chat from Dave
Okay.
Hastings, which
Okay.
could take 10 minutes to answer, but maybe with a short answer. Do you
I can
tie
give
your
you a
stuff
short-
in? Do you tie your stuff in? Or do you let it be loose in the boat?
I'd like to do this in two conflicting answers. Personally, never tie it in. If you're got to do a rescue anywhere, even in a nice eddy like this big little pond or this little pond here in the picture, let it float around. So what? It's all supposed to be waterproof, and you'll sure as heck find out if it is or not. But if you're trying to rescue a boat that's got stuff tied inside it, it's a mess. You have to go out there with a very sharp knife and cut all the ropes before you can rescue it. Now, Doug, do you want to do about your style of roping?
Well, no, I mean, that's quite right. And since we're talking about the Canadian Shield here, not tying the gear in is quite reasonable because it's, as Jim says, it's not going anywhere. If you flip in your canoe, you're basically in the lake no matter where you are, and everything's just bobbing around. If you dump it while you're lining or running a short rapid, it's only going to flush out into the lake. It's not like here, where if you dump at Lake Louise, your gear can end up the other side of Canmore without stopping. On the Shield, it's going to stop and it's going to float around. So having it not tied into the boat makes it considerably easier for everything. There are arguments for tying your gear in the boat, but let's leave those for when we're not in the Shield.
Yes.
The
Okay. Okay.
All righty.
Sounds
Jim
good.
and
I
Bucky,
agree
we,
totally, Doug.
We have
yeah,
a
the only
question
other
in
thing
the-
I was going to say is about when you look at if you read the descriptions of all these notebooks and stuff on canoe routes in the Shield, people who've never paddled in the Shield before get all excited when it says there's 47 portages in your 5-day canoe trip. But the Shield is full of short, easy portages. And if you're going to be canoe tripping, the last thing you want to do is be afraid of portaging. You want to learn to do it simply, quickly, efficiently, and realize that portaging is your friend. And as long as you can portage well, you can travel anywhere in the Shield, safely and easily. So portaging is something people think, well, it's just a chore to do, and it is, but it's something that's really worthwhile getting good at because you do it a lot in the Shield. There's no doubt about it. And it is your friend. It means you can go anywhere without worrying about having to paddle bad rapids. Because in the Shield, all the bad rapids are short. You can always go around them. Sorry, that was just my little bit.
No,
Very nice.
much appreciated.
Now, I'd like to move along here. And another element that I learned from Jim Buckingham in the Shield is how to sail. Bucky,
Yes.
this was a real treat. And Bucky told us, well, let's try sailing this one. It was a long lake and the wind was going in the right direction. And I said, well, how do you do it? And he said, well, let's just get started and see if we can get a sheet up, and then in incremental steps, increase the effectiveness of the sail. We found it was a great team activity. Everyone got involved. We lashed the boats together, which was good and bad. It was good in that we were one unit. It was bad in that once we got up to speed, we got water pouring up between the gunnels of the three boats at the front. We started taking on water quickly. So you always have to have an ability to untangle yourself, save you once it got too busy. It's hard to see where you're going when you got a big sail like that at the front. And I think I was steering in the back of the right-hand boat, but I couldn't always see where I was going. And you can see Jim Buckingham in his preferred seat and posture, laying down in the back of that middle boat. But this is a lot of fun, and you can see all the gear is on good display there too.
As a general rule on canoe trips, you should never have to have so much gear that it's piled higher than the gunnels. It should be level with the gunnels at most. But if you got piles of stuff higher than the gunnels, you don't need it. We did 6 weeks carrying our food, and admittedly we had 18-foot Grummins, but we never had stuff heaped up on top of the higher than the gunnels. So it can be done, and it sure makes everything much more accessible when you're taking it out. If you got layers of stuff, it really gets to be a pain.
Okay. Well, you know, we're getting near to the end of the show tonight. We've had quite a presentation, not just from Jim, but a number of people. And thank you, Doug. Are there any questions before I go to the submitted photos that we want to show you?
We do
I'd
have a
like to do
question.
okay, question.
We have a question from Glenda. She was wondering, for those of us who have never lined a canoe, what are some things they should know?
Doug's the expert.
There's a lot to know about lining. When you look at the pictures, and like the picture Jim showed here in his little presentation, it looks like it's all simple and easy, but things can go wrong so fast you can't even blink an eye before everything's upside down, people in the water, and all sorts of stuff. So it's something to think about and certainly practice on slower water. Rather than talk all about it here, I can post an article on lining on the website that you can go look at, and will probably answer most of the questions.
Sure, that would be great. We can put that out in the email as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you,
And make
Doug.
sure everyone gets that.
I would like
Glenda?
to say, oh, sorry.
Glenda,
Well,
thank
look
you
at this
for
picture.
being interested. And it is very dangerous. So be sure you've got an experienced person helping you out.
But it's very very, very useful. So, you know, don't be afraid of it. Just like portaging, learn how to do it.
Right
Sorry.
on.
I'm gonna take you and Doug with me.
Yeah, okay, we'll go.
All right,
I'd
there.
like to talk about one other thing somewhere here, Jim.
Go right ahead. This is your final chance.
Okay, there's two things. Bears. So many Canadians are so afraid of bears. I know that people won't come to the town of Banff because there's bears here. Well, in the Canadian Shield, there are bears. There are only black bears. And the typical view you get of a black bear is a good shot of his ass going like hell to get away from you. And that's their normal reaction. It's very, very rare with shield bears that they do not want to mess around with you. So do not fear bears. They're minor problem. The other one is bugs. People say, oh, I never go to the Shield, it's too buggy. You probably went in June and you were right. But in August or late July or September, the Shield country basically doesn't have bugs. Sometimes there's patches of them, but really it's not very buggy in those times. Don't go in June.
Well, Jim, thank you very
Okay.
much. And you know, for those of you who haven't met Jim, I hope you get a chance to do it. He's influenced so many of our canoeing lives, and still will. And he gave us a nice display of swimming a rapid just a week or so ago.
Many times. I have the record for number of dumps in
Yeah.
the Bow River by miles. Doug fell in once. He probably wasn't all the way in. But me, I go haul hog. Okay, I'll
So-
shut up.
Now we're going to, we're just going to share some photos, and you'll like these, Bucky, that have been submitted to Canoeing Live. And this is on your last canoe course, and this is one of your rescue teams. This is Brian in the back and Karen in the front, and Karen is
It would
doing,
be that Karen. is
Yeah.
doing a cross draw.
We've been trying to cure
Yes.
her from that for years, but she just hasn't learned.
Yeah. She's a nice girl, but she's got to learn.
And,
Yeah.
and she's having fun doing it. Okay.
Yes,
Um,
that's the worst.
and here is some more pictures on the course. I like the beautiful fold in the Miette sandstone behind them. But Tara McConnery and Megan Borthwick. Here's another one from the Bow River.
Same one.
This is Brian Armstrong and Tina. You regular viewers will remember Tina Marika Barzo Guy talking about clean, drain, and dry, and I hope you're all doing that well. They seem to be having fun too.
They're screaming
And
in fear.
here's my wife, Chip. Chip and I, this is just after the Bath Creek pours into the Bow River. Here's a picture just 2 days ago in the North Saskatchewan. Kim and Avery and Brad Hahn. Look at all the sediment in that river. It was running, I think it was about 260 CMS that day,
When was that, Jim?
2 days ago.
2 days ago.
Yeah,
You put in at the crossing?
we put in at the crossing, and this is very soon after. And there's the Wilson Formation, the quartzite up there on the mountain, Bucky.
Yes,
We drove right by you. We had paddled the upper section 2 days before that.
Yeah, we did the upper one Friday and then this one Saturday.
Geez, we must have missed you just by a day.
And here's Devin, our co-producer, Devin in the back, and Molly. She's doing a beautiful peel out into that swift water.
It was swift.
Yeah.
Devin's got a nice lean on there.
Yes, a sympathetic lean.
Yes. Good stuff.
And here, this was this morning in Waterfowl Lake. Karen Messenger, Eric Carlton, and their 2-year-old Stride are out for a morning paddle.
That's a hell of a name for a paddler.
Now, just an FYI for you folks that are paddling in the national parks, we now have self-certification permits in the parks that ensure that we're aware of the clean, drain and dry concept. And we're seeing more and more of these collection boxes all the time. Let's see, we want to finish off by 8:30. Just want to remind you all, although we're getting close to the end of COVID, we've got to be careful right till the very end, and we want to encourage that behavior in all paddlers. The recording of tonight's presentation will be on our website within a few days, and it will join Doug McCowan's presentation on safety, Tina's on leave no trace and clean, dry, and drain, and Mark Lund's excellent presentation on planning and Google Earth. Our next Canoeing Live will be July 18th, and we welcome you back. We'll have some, we're not too sure what the topic will be, but it's going to be a good one. We're going to try breakout rooms to increase interaction. And please keep submitting your photos. And let's see here. Next sessions, we're just going to do 2 sessions over the 2 months. There's just too much paddling to do it all the time. And we want to thank you all for being a part of it today. And for those of you who have time, we're going to just open up the mics. I'm going to stop talking and screen sharing, and we can all have a little chat if you can stay with us for a few a few moments. Want to thank you again, Bucky, for an
Yes,
excellent
I'm-
performance.
I'm looking forward to questions or comments from all these experienced shield paddlers.
Okay, and just a reminder, if you want to save that chat before you sign off, you can do that right at the bottom under the 3 little ellipses there in the square box, and save all of that good information in the chat. And thank you very much for coming. And I'm going to stop screen sharing and I'm going to stop talking.